This is the story that keeps on giving, and the freebie scandal continues to cause headaches for the Prime Minister, as it's now been revealed that he met with Swift at her Wembley gig back in August on the day that Downing Street intervened to grant her a VIP security escort.
So is the real right not that he met her, or not that this was some sort of payola, but that she in return got a free VIP escort? Is that the controversy?
Yeah, lots of... Well, I think there's just extra layers to it. I mean, at the time this picture came out, everybody said how lovely. They are supporting the British economy at this big gig. And then it turns out they had a little tete-a-tete and sorted out blue lights for the superstar.
My question is, what on earth does a 60-year-old man want to go and see a teen idol?
It's a family outing. He took his kids as well.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, and she's mega.
That would be my idea of hell. Well, where are we going, Dad? We're going to see Taylor Swift.
I'd love to have gone.
Anyway.
But anyway, the Prime Minister and his family reportedly spoke with the pop star for a whopping 10 minutes. And they were given free tickets to one of her gigs in the summer. OK, who are we going to talk to about this?
Nigel Huddleston MP is there. I don't know if he... Nigel, good morning to you. Did you go and see Taylor Swift?
I'm afraid I didn't, no. I was not invited, yeah.
Oh, right, OK.
I just want to start this little interview with some breaking news, because I'm just hearing that inflation has fallen below the 2% target for the first time in 3 years, which is great news for the government, and it's the sort of figures that Rishi Sunak had been seeking for the whole time.
Well, indeed, but I have to say, on the Taylor Swift thing, let's be clear, that's not a good look, is it, for the Prime Minister?
Well, we can come on to that in a minute, but I just want your reaction to...
But the inflation... Yeah, so it's obviously good news that inflation is falling again. Of course, a lot of the dynamics of the economy mean that inflation figures are coming down largely as a result of the work of the previous government, because what this government's been doing with inflation-busting pay rises, for example, might compromise the direction of travel there. But it's good news because, of course, this was a key strategy and key target of the last government, and we had to make difficult decisions in order to bring inflation down. So I welcome the numbers, but I fear what may come next.
Yeah, but Nigel, sorry, just on this point, does it not just make you a little bit frustrated that Rishi Sunak jumped the gun so early in calling that election?
Well, look, there was never a good time to call an election.
Well, it might have been better to do it after these figures.
Challenge. Look, at the end of the day, we're going through a lot of soul-searching at the moment as to why we lost the last election. The economy was one aspect of it, but let's be clear, there was a lot of other factors why the British public were frustrated with us, and we're in a listening mode at the moment to understand that. Yeah. But I am glad that these figures have come down. Look, I do want to welcome good news in the economy, because after all, this government has done nothing but taught the UK economy down since they came to power, which itself is causing damage. But I welcome these figures. This is good news for the UK economy. But let's be clear, this is not a result of government policy, current government policy.
OK. Nigel, let me ask you, when you know, so much is made of this black hole of £2.2 billion, now Rachel Reeves is saying, even if we pay that off, the economy will only be standing still. We're going to have to do more. So we all dread what the heck's going to happen in this Halloween horror of a budget that is coming our way and that she's not talking about. What would you, if you were in power, what would the Conservatives, do you think, do with that black hole? My point being, do we necessarily have to address it?
Well, look, there's a black hole, or the government's calling a black hole, because of political choices they are making about the spending decisions they themselves are making. We had budgets, Jeremy Hunt had budgets, and we had forecasts, and we worked with the OBR to make sure that we spent within our means. That's the point of having fiscal events. This government, since they came to power, has had £10 billion splurge on inflation-busting pay increases, spent billions of pounds on GB Energy, billions of pounds on a national wealth fund, and a whole bunch of other announcements and measures. So if there is a black hole, let's be clear, it's of their own making. We're talking about billions of pounds out of a total government spending of £1.2 trillion as well. So this is all in the context of decisions that a government makes about its tax and spending plans. But even if there was a multi-billion pound tax hole that they said that they inherited, then why dig that hole deeper with all of these additional spending commitments? It shows utter incompetence by this government and this Chancellor.
Yeah, the Shadow Chancellor Jeremy Hunt was working on the estimate of around 8.9 billion, wasn't he, that he needed to plug. Can we talk, though, about your claim there that the government have been talking the country down and that these inflation figures have got nothing to do with anything that they've done? Well, we've had this huge investment summit. They've managed to attract twice the investment that the Conservatives did at the same event a year ago. It obviously isn't that bad. The business is saying they want security and stability, and they obviously feel they're getting that.
I don't think that's the case at all. I think Eric Schmidt, the former CEO of Google, said he was surprised by some of the government's plans for growth because that was different from what he had been hearing. And of course, about half of those announcements were things that we were working on when we were in power. So I welcome that investment. But let's be clear, a lot of that has been in the pipeline for a long period of time. But this government has literally, since they came to power, done nothing than talk this country down. They've talked the economy down. And surprise, surprise, therefore, there is caution about investment in the UK because, you know, they're meant to be ambassadors. They're meant to be talking the country up. It's as if they haven't realised they're in government now. They're still operating as if they're in opposition, constantly saying negative things. It is the responsibility of government to talk positively and to manage the government's finances appropriately and send signals of optimism and confidence about the UK economy. I don't know, have you heard that from this government? Because I certainly haven't.
Well, let me ask you, Nigel, is a tax on employers' contributions to national insurance a tax on workers or not?
Absolutely, clearly it is, because whenever a government dips into the finances of a business, it basically means that there's less money available for investment or wage increases. And let's be clear, the manifesto that the Labour Party stood on at the last election very clearly said we will not increase national insurance. No caveat, no footnote explaining or justifying that. It was very clearly we will not increase national insurance. And it's perfectly fair and reasonable for most people and most businesses to assume that that meant employee and employer national insurance. So that was a sleight of hand there. It basically is an admission now by, I think, the comments from both Keir Starmer and the Chancellor, is that we cannot believe a word in any manifesto that Labour ever write again.
Now, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the Taylor Swift story, that I can't believe the amount of mileage it's still generating. It's even on the front of the left-leaning Guardian this morning. But what do you make of it all? Because, you know, there she was. This is a global superstar. She'd had to cancel events in Vienna because of a threat there. It was in the wake of the Southport attacks, which had happened on a Taylor Swift-themed party. Surely she, if anyone, was entitled to a VIP police escort, even if it is at the taxpayer's expense. Does it matter that the Prime Minister met with her as well?
Well, I think it's important for a government to support international events like this, whether they're football events or music events. They are incredible contributors to the UK economy. And one of my ministerial roles, I used to oversee some of that. But that's a different thing from taking freebies and giving things in return, which appears to be the case here. So I do think it looks really bad. Now, we don't know the full details of what was said in return for what, but we're very restrictive in terms of those blue lights and those escorts. It's restricted usually for international dignitaries, royal families and so on. It's very rare. In fact, I've not heard this before, for it to be extended to a superstar, and quite frankly somebody who is a billionaire themselves and could probably afford those services without having to rely on taxpayers in the UK to do it. We welcome Taylor Swift. She's always welcome here. But that kind of special favour seemed extraordinary, and it just doesn't look good in the context of all those freebie tickets, not just to Keir Starmer, but many others.
Nigel, just to finish with, we're reintroducing this assisted dying argument tonight in the Commons, and I just wondered where you stood on that.
You know, this is an area that's so sensitive, and I have changed my mind on this issue over the years about 5 times. Interestingly, I stood in the 2010 election in Luton South, where one of my opponents was Dame Esther Rantzen. And we've been texting and messaging backwards and forwards on this because she's got very strong views on this and can be very persuasive. But I've also had constituents come to me in surgeries, and they then sway me the other way when they say, you know, some of whom, for example, have been to Dignitas and they supported families, and they now say that they regretted it because they felt guilty for the rest of their lives helping their family members die. So I'm really agonising over this, as I can assure you most MPs are, because we know how serious it is. I can see the arguments for, but I'd need to see really carefully what the caveats and what the actual legislation says, because it needs to be really carefully worded for me to support it. And I think quite a lot of colleagues are thinking the same.
Appreciate your thoughts. Thank you very much. And I think a lot of people will identify with what you're saying there, the whole dilemma with this sort of thing.